I sat in the principal's office watching my parents choose my brother Tyler over me for the 100th time. Mom's voice trembled as she announced my suspension, until I apologized for sabotaging Tyler's scholarship interview. Dad nodded grimly, completely convinced I'd ruined everything out of jealousy. Tyler sat smugly beside them, playing the wounded victim perfectly. They demanded I admit to lies I never told, confess to sabotage I never committed. I looked at their expectant faces and said the two words that would change everything forever. All right then. Everyone in that room expected me to break down, to beg for forgiveness, to admit to crimes I never committed. Instead, I simply accepted my fate with those two quiet words. What they didn't understand was that this moment had been building for 17 years of my life. Tyler had always been the golden child. 3 years older than me, he was everything my parents dreamed of in a son. Star quarterback of the Riverside High Eagles, straight-A student, homecoming king, and now a scholarship candidate for Stanford University. I was the forgotten middle child, the one who spent more time with computers than people, who preferred coding to catching footballs. Our family dynamic was crystal clear from childhood. Tyler's room overflowed with trophies, ribbons, and medals. His achievements covered our refrigerator like wallpaper. Meanwhile, my academic accomplishments in technology and computer science barely earned a nod of acknowledgement at the dinner table. When Tyler scored a touchdown, Dad would call his brother to brag. When I won the state programming competition, Dad asked if I'd finished my chores. The incident that landed me in that principal's office happened 3 weeks earlier, during the most crucial time of Tyler's senior year. Stanford representatives were coming to conduct his final scholarship interview, worth a full ride to one of the nation's most prestigious universities. The entire family was on edge, making sure everything went perfectly for Tyler's big moment. That Tuesday afternoon, Tyler burst into my room in a panic. His laptop had crashed, and he needed help recovering his college application essays. These weren't just any essays. They were the final versions he'd spent months perfecting, the ones that would determine his Stanford acceptance. As his tech-savvy little brother, I was the obvious choice to rescue his digital disaster. I spent 2 hours carefully recovering his files from the corrupted hard drive. During the process, I discovered something that made my stomach drop. Buried in his recovered documents were dozens of PayPal transactions, each for amounts between $50 and $200, all sent to a senior named Marcus Webb. The payment descriptions were coded, but the pattern was unmistakable. AP history essay, English lit analysis, chemistry lab report. My curiosity led me deeper into Tyler's digital footprint. I found saved drafts of essays that clearly weren't written in Tyler's voice or style. The vocabulary was too sophisticated, the sentence structure too complex, the references too obscure for someone who struggled to read assigned novels. I discovered recorded phone conversations where Marcus was clearly completing verbal assignments for Tyler, even doing practice interviews for college applications. The most damning evidence was a folder titled College Apps, containing multiple versions of personal statements, each written in Marcus's distinctive style, but submitted under Tyler's name. The essays that had impressed Stanford admissions officers, that had earned him this prestigious scholarship opportunity, weren't even written by my brother. Tyler had built his entire college future on a foundation of academic fraud. When confronted with this evidence, Tyler's reaction was immediate and telling. He didn't deny it. Instead, he became defensive, then manipulative. He claimed everyone did it, that the competition was so fierce he had no choice. He insisted he was still smart, that he just needed help organizing his thoughts. He promised it was temporary, just until he got into college and could handle things himself. I gave Tyler 24 hours to confess to our parents and withdraw his Stanford application. I told him he could start fresh, apply to other schools honestly, and rebuild his academic reputation the right way. I wasn't trying to destroy his future. I was trying to save his integrity. Tyler seemed to accept my ultimatum that night. He thanked me for caring about his character and promised to tell Mom and Dad everything the next morning. I went to bed believing my brother would do the right thing. Instead, Tyler spent that night orchestrating the most elaborate betrayal I'd ever experienced. He copied my computer forensics tools, planted fake evidence suggesting I'd hacked into the school's grading system, and created a fictional narrative about my jealousy driving me to sabotage his success. He even manipulated the timestamps on files to make it appear I'd been accessing his accounts for weeks, systematically trying to undermine his achievements. The next morning, Tyler tearfully confessed to our parents, not about his own fraud, but about my supposed jealousy and sabotage attempts. He showed them the planted evidence, explained how devastated he was by his little brother's betrayal, and begged them not to hate me because I was clearly struggling with mental health issues. By the time I woke up, Tyler had already spoken to Principal Martinez, Assistant Principal Johnson, and our parents. He'd painted himself as the victim of a disturbed sibling's jealousy, complete with crocodile tears and heartfelt concern for my psychological well-being. When I tried to present the real evidence of Tyler's fraud, everyone dismissed it as deeper proof of my obsession with destroying my brother's success. The most painful part wasn't being falsely accused. It was watching my parents choose to believe Tyler's lies over my documented proof. They looked at their golden boy, then at their overlooked middle child, and decided which story fit their preferred reality. The evidence didn't matter. The truth didn't matter. Their investment in Tyler's perfect image mattered more than justice. That's how I ended up suspended from school 3 days before Tyler's Stanford interview, accused of computer crimes I'd never committed, while the real criminal prepared for his scholarship opportunity built entirely on fraud. And that's why my simple response of, "All right then," carried so much more weight than anyone in that room could possibly understand. What my family didn't know was that Tyler's academic fraud was just the tip of an iceberg that ran much deeper than anyone imagined. During my suspension, while Tyler basked in the sympathy and support of teachers and administrators, I used my involuntary free time to dig deeper into what I'd discovered. My computer skills had always been my refuge from family disappointment, and now they became my investigative tools. I'd built a custom network monitoring system for a summer internship that allowed me to analyze digital patterns and trace online activities. Applied to Tyler's digital footprint, this system revealed a criminal enterprise that shocked even me. Tyler wasn't just paying Marcus for his own assignments. He was operating a full-scale academic fraud network that serviced at least 12 other students from wealthy families. Parents were unknowingly funding their children's cheating through increased allowances and credit card limits. Tyler had turned academic dishonesty into a profitable business, taking a commission from every transaction while maintaining plausible deniability. The payment records showed a sophisticated operation. Tyler never handled money directly. Instead, he connected paying students with Marcus and 2 other seniors who specialized in different subjects. Tyler's cut came through separate transactions disguised as payments for tutoring sessions and study materials. He'd created an entire ecosystem of corruption while maintaining his reputation as an honest, hard-working student. But the most devastating discovery was yet to come. Hidden in Tyler's cloud storage, protected by multiple passwords I eventually cracked, I found evidence that Tyler had been blackmailing Assistant Principal Johnson for almost 2 years. The folder contained photographs, text messages, and recorded conversations that documented an affair between Johnson and Mrs. Patricia Stevens, the married chemistry teacher. Tyler had caught them during a school camping trip in his sophomore year. Instead of reporting the inappropriate relationship or simply staying silent, Tyler had carefully documented their secret meetings, photographed them in compromising situations, and recorded conversations where Johnson admitted the relationship was wrong, but claimed he couldn't stop himself. Tyler used this leverage systematically. Every time his grades needed adjustment, every disciplinary issue that arose, every favor he needed from the administration, Tyler reminded Johnson about those photos. The assistant principal had become Tyler's personal advocate, protecting him from consequences and ensuring favorable treatment in every situation. The text messages were particularly damning. Tyler's communications with Johnson were polite, but unmistakably threatening. He'd send messages like, "Thanks for understanding about the chemistry test makeup. I really appreciate administrators who care about maintaining appropriate relationships with all faculty members. Johnson's responses were always compliant and fearful, agreeing to whatever Tyler requested while pleading for discretion. This explained so much about Tyler's untouchable status at school. Teachers who questioned his work were reassigned. Disciplinary issues disappeared from his record. College recommendation letters were glowing despite clear evidence of attitude problems. Tyler hadn't just built a reputation through achievement. He'd built it through systematic manipulation and blackmail. The corruption network extended beyond Johnson. Tyler had compromising information on 3 teachers and 2 other administrators. Mrs. Patterson, the English teacher, had been falsifying attendance records for student athletes, allowing them to pass classes they rarely attended. Coach Miller had been selling tickets to games and pocketing the profits instead of donating them to the athletic department. Mr. Davidson, the guidance counselor, had been changing student transcripts to help favored students qualify for colleges they hadn't earned admission to. Tyler knew about all of it. He'd collected evidence on everyone, creating a web of mutual protection where corrupt adults covered for each other and for him. The golden boy image wasn't maintained through excellence. It was maintained through fear and manipulation. The most heartbreaking discovery was a recording Tyler had made of our parents discussing my future. They decided I was the difficult child who needed more discipline and less attention. Dad admitted he found Tyler easier to love because Tyler's successes made him feel like a successful father, while my different interests made him feel inadequate. Mom agreed that Tyler deserved priority in family resources because his potential was more obvious. Tyler had recorded this conversation specifically to use against me if needed. He'd known for months that our parents preferred him, and he'd documented it as insurance against any future challenges to his status. The brother I'd tried to protect from his own mistakes had been systematically destroying my relationship with our family while building evidence to use against me when convenient. This revelation changed everything about how I understood our family dynamics. My parents hadn't just chosen Tyler over me in that principal's office. They'd been choosing Tyler over me for years, and Tyler had been carefully cultivating and documenting their preference. The suspension wasn't an aberration. It was the inevitable result of a system Tyler had spent years constructing. Armed with this knowledge, I realized that trying to reform Tyler or convince my parents of the truth was pointless. Tyler had built an empire of corruption that served his interests perfectly, and my family had become willing participants in maintaining his facade. The system was working exactly as designed, for everyone except me. That's when I decided to stop playing by their rules and start playing by mine. While my family celebrated Tyler's upcoming Stanford interview and discussed my need for psychological counseling, I was quietly putting together the most important plan of my life. The suspension that was meant to punish me had actually given me the perfect opportunity to prepare for a future none of them saw coming. 6 months earlier, during the height of my parents' indifference to my achievements, I'd secretly applied to Westfield Academy, an elite private school 2 hours away that specialized in technology and computer science programs. Unlike Riverside High, where my abilities were overlooked in favor of Tyler's athletic achievements, Westfield actively recruited students with exceptional technical skills. My application portfolio included the network monitoring system I'd developed, a mobile app that had gained recognition in state competitions, and recommendations from professors at the local university where I'd been taking advanced programming courses during summer breaks. While my family focused entirely on Tyler's football games and social achievements, I'd been quietly building relationships with mentors who recognized and nurtured my potential. The acceptance letter arrived 3 weeks before Tyler's Stanford interview. Full scholarship, guaranteed placement in advanced courses, and access to research opportunities that would set me up for admission to top-tier universities. The letter sat hidden in my room, while my parents planned Tyler's celebration dinner and discussed how disappointed they were in my attitude problems. I'd kept this acceptance secret because I'd still hoped my family situation might improve. Despite everything, I loved my parents and wanted to believe they could learn to appreciate my different path. Tyler's betrayal and their blind support of his lies had finally convinced me that staying was pointless. During my 2 weeks of suspension, while everyone assumed I was reflecting on my mistakes, I was actually building an ironclad case against Tyler's criminal enterprise. Using techniques I'd learned from my computer science mentors, I meticulously documented every aspect of Tyler's fraud network. I created encrypted files containing all evidence, screenshots of every PayPal transaction between Tyler, Marcus, and the other students, recordings of Tyler admitting to academic dishonesty, photographic evidence of the blackmail materials Tyler kept on school administrators, documented proof of grade changes and transcript alterations, detailed financial records showing Tyler's profits from the cheating network, and testimonials from 3 students who'd been pressured into participating and wanted to come forward but were afraid of consequences. The most damning evidence was a recording Tyler had made himself, intended as insurance against Marcus potentially betraying him. In this recording, Tyler explicitly detailed how he'd built his corruption network, described his blackmail leverage over multiple school officials, and boasted about manipulating our parents and administrators. He'd recorded this confession as protection against Marcus, never imagining it would become evidence against himself. I also discovered Tyler had embezzled $7,200 from the school's annual fundraising account. As student government treasurer, Tyler had access to donation funds meant for new computer equipment. Over 18 months, he'd systematically transferred small amounts to accounts controlled by his fraud network, then used those funds to pay for his fake assignments and maintain his blackmail operations. My investigation revealed that Tyler's crimes extended beyond academic fraud into theft, blackmail, and racketeering. This wasn't teenage misbehavior. This was a sophisticated criminal operation that had corrupted multiple adults and defrauded numerous families. While compiling this evidence, I reached out to contacts I'd developed through my technology work. Dr. Amanda Richardson, the superintendent of our school district, had spoken at a cybersecurity conference where I'd presented research. She remembered my work and agreed to meet with me confidentially. Jennifer Walsh, the education reporter for our local newspaper, had interviewed me about student technology initiatives and respected my integrity. Detective Sarah Martinez, who specialized in white-collar crime and had mentored students in my computer ethics course, understood the legal implications of what I'd discovered. I prepared detailed presentations for each of them, with legally obtained evidence and carefully documented chains of custody. Unlike Tyler's emotional manipulation tactics, my approach relied on facts, documentation, and professional credibility I'd built through years of honest work. I also contacted Stanford University's admissions fraud department. Universities had become increasingly vigilant about application authenticity, and Stanford maintained a dedicated team for investigating suspicious submissions. Tyler's application contained multiple red flags that would trigger immediate investigation once properly documented. The timing of my transfer to Westfield Academy was perfect. By leaving Riverside High before exposing Tyler's crimes, I'd be beyond the reach of the corrupted administrators who'd protected him. I could provide evidence to proper authorities without fear of retaliation or cover-up. Tyler's network of blackmail and manipulation would be powerless to touch me once I was officially enrolled elsewhere. My plan wasn't motivated by revenge. It was motivated by justice. Tyler's crimes had hurt dozens of people. Students who'd been pressured into cheating, families who'd unknowingly funded corruption, teachers who'd been blackmailed into compromising their professional integrity, and universities that had been defrauded by fake applications. The system of corruption Tyler had created would continue harming people unless someone with evidence and credibility exposed it. More importantly, I'd realized that my family's dysfunction would never improve as long as Tyler's criminal behavior was rewarded and protected. My parents would never recognize Tyler's true character or their own enabling behavior until forced to confront undeniable evidence. Their favoritism had created a monster, and that monster would continue destroying lives until someone stopped him. As I finalized my transfer paperwork and prepared my evidence presentations, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: hope. For the first time in my life, I was taking control of my own destiny instead of accepting my family's version of reality. Win or lose, I would face the consequences of standing up for truth instead of enabling lies. Tyler had underestimated me for the last time. He'd assumed that destroying my reputation and isolating me from family support would neutralize any threat I posed. Instead, he'd freed me from obligations and expectations that had kept me trapped in a dysfunctional system. The golden boy was about to discover that his little brother had grown up. Transfer day arrived with unexpected calm. I woke up early, packed the last of my belongings into cardboard boxes, and prepared for what I knew would be my final day at Riverside High School. Tyler was already downstairs eating breakfast, regaling our parents with stories about how confident he felt for his Stanford interview scheduled for the following week. Mom fussed over Tyler's nutrition, making sure he ate enough protein and vitamins to perform at his peak. Dad reviewed Tyler's talking points about leadership and community service, helping him practice responses to difficult questions. Neither of them acknowledged my presence at the breakfast table, treating my transfer preparations as deserved consequences for my supposed sabotage attempts. Tyler, meanwhile, maintained his smug demeanor from the previous weeks. He'd become even more confident since my suspension, interpreting my quiet acceptance as proof that his manipulation had succeeded completely. When I loaded boxes into Dad's car for the drive to clean out my locker, Tyler made jokes to his friends about his jealous little brother finally learning his place. The hallways of Riverside High felt different as I walked them for the last time. Students whispered as I passed, some with sympathy for what they believed was unjust treatment, others with curiosity about the drama surrounding Tyler's scholarship situation. Teachers avoided eye contact, uncomfortable with the family conflict they'd witnessed, but unwilling to question the administration's handling of my case. I emptied my locker methodically, removing 3 years' worth of accumulated belongings while Tyler watched from across the hallway with his girlfriend and teammates. He was clearly enjoying the spectacle, pointing out to friends how thoroughly defeated I appeared. His laughter carried across the corridor as he made comments about teaching family loyalty and accepting consequences. What Tyler couldn't see was the transfer paperwork I'd already filed with the guidance office. While he'd been basking in sympathy and planning his Stanford celebration, I'd completed every step necessary to officially withdraw from Riverside High and enroll at Westfield Academy. The process was finalized that morning, making my departure legally binding and immediate. During lunch period, Tyler overheard me mention to Miss Rodriguez, my computer science teacher, that I was grateful for her recommendation letter and looked forward to staying in touch from Westfield Academy. The casual comment triggered something in Tyler's brain, causing him to pay closer attention to my activities instead of simply enjoying my humiliation. He followed me to the guidance office, where he watched through the window as I submitted my final withdrawal forms and received confirmation of my successful transfer. Tyler's expression changed from amusement to confusion to growing alarm as he realized I wasn't just being punished, I was permanently leaving. Tyler cornered me in the parking lot after school, his usual confident demeanor replaced by barely controlled anxiety. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't performing for an audience of supporters. His mask of righteous victimhood slipped as he demanded to know what I thought I was doing. "You can't just leave," Tyler insisted, his voice carrying an edge of panic. "This is your school. These are your friends. You're running away because you can't handle being held accountable for what you did." I calmly loaded the last box into Dad's car and turned to face my brother. 3 weeks of investigation and planning had given me a clarity I'd never felt before. Tyler's power over me had always depended on my desire for family acceptance and my fear of confrontation. With my transfer to Westfield Academy confirmed and my evidence compiled, those leverage points no longer existed. "I'm not running away from anything, Tyler," I replied evenly. "I'm running towards something better. You should worry less about what I'm doing and more about what you've already done." Tyler's face flushed with anger and fear. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to avoid attracting attention from other students leaving school. "You better not be planning something stupid. You already tried to sabotage me once and failed. Don't make things worse for yourself. The only person who sabotaged your future is you, I said, maintaining eye contact. I just documented it. Tyler's confidence cracked visibly. He grabbed my arm, his grip tight enough to hurt, and demanded details about my plans. The desperation in his voice revealed how thoroughly his sense of control had evaporated. The golden boy who'd manipulated administrators, blackmailed teachers, and fooled our parents suddenly looked like what he'd always been underneath. A frightened teenager who'd built his entire identity on lies. What documentation? Tyler whispered urgently. What do you think you know? I pulled my arm free and stepped back. Everything, Tyler. I know about Marcus and the essay payments. I know about the blackmail photos you have of Assistant Principal Johnson and Mrs. Stevens. I know about the fundraising money you stole. I know about the grade changes and transcript alterations. I know about the recordings you made of our parents discussing how much they prefer you over me. Tyler's face went completely white. He stumbled backward, looking around frantically to make sure no one else had heard our conversation. The brother who'd confidently destroyed my reputation 3 weeks ago was now terrified by the possibility that his own crimes might be exposed. You're lying, Tyler said weakly, but his voice carried no conviction. He knew exactly what evidence existed because he'd created most of it himself. Am I asked quietly. Then you have nothing to worry about. Enjoy your Stanford interview, Tyler. I hope you remember to use your own words this time. I got into Dad's car and closed the door, leaving Tyler standing alone in the parking lot. Through the rear window, I watched him pull out his phone and frantically make calls, probably trying to reach Marcus or calculate damage control options. Dad drove me home in silence, still convinced that my transfer was an overreaction to appropriate consequences. He saw my calm demeanor as evidence that I was finally accepting responsibility for my mistakes and learning valuable lessons about respect and family loyalty. What Dad didn't understand was that I was indeed learning valuable lessons, just not the ones he intended. I was learning that sometimes the people who claim to love you will sacrifice your well-being to protect their own comfort. I was learning that integrity often requires standing alone against people who choose convenient lies over uncomfortable truths. Most importantly, I was learning that my worth wasn't determined by my family's ability to appreciate my value. That evening, while Tyler made increasingly desperate phone calls behind his closed bedroom door, I finished packing for my new life at Westfield Academy. Tomorrow morning, I'd drive 2 hours to a school where my abilities would be recognized and nurtured. Tomorrow afternoon, I'd begin making calls to the district superintendent, newspaper reporter, and law enforcement contacts who were expecting my evidence presentation. Tyler had taught me that sometimes you have to choose between being loved and being honest. I'd finally chosen honesty, and it felt like freedom. The next morning brought chaos that none of my family had anticipated. Tyler's phone rang at 6:30 a.m., with a call that sent him into complete panic mode. I could hear him pacing in his room, his voice alternating between desperate pleading and angry demands as he tried to control a situation that was rapidly spiraling beyond his reach. Marcus had gotten cold feet about the entire fraud operation. Tyler's increasingly frantic calls the previous evening had convinced Marcus that exposure was imminent, prompting him to make a preemptive confession to his own parents, rather than wait for consequences to find him. Marcus's parents, horrified by their son's involvement in academic fraud, had immediately contacted our school district to report the cheating network and distance themselves from potential legal liability. Tyler burst into the kitchen where our parents were drinking coffee and reading morning news. His careful composure from recent weeks had completely evaporated, replaced by raw terror and desperate calculation. He paced frantically, running his hands through his hair and muttering about damage control and plausible deniability. Marcus is lying about everything, Tyler announced suddenly, his voice shrill with panic. He's trying to pin his own cheating on me because he's afraid of getting caught. You can't believe anything he says. He's jealous that I got the Stanford scholarship opportunity and he didn't. Mom and Dad exchanged confused glances. They'd been led to believe that my suspension had resolved all academic integrity issues. The possibility that Tyler was involved in actual cheating contradicted everything they'd accepted about his character and my supposed sabotage attempts. Tyler's phone rang again. This time, it was Assistant Principal Johnson, requesting an immediate meeting with Tyler and our parents before school started. Tyler's face went gray as he realized that Marcus's confession had triggered exactly the administrative investigation he'd worked so hard to prevent. "This is all connected to Donald's jealousy," Tyler insisted desperately. "He probably convinced Marcus to make false accusations as revenge for being suspended. You know how angry he's been about my Stanford opportunity. This is just another sabotage attempt." But even as Tyler spoke, his phone was buzzing with text messages from other students in his fraud network. Word was spreading quickly through social media that Marcus had confessed to academic dishonesty involving multiple students. Parents were asking questions, teachers were reviewing assignment authenticity, and administrators were beginning to connect patterns they'd previously overlooked. Dad demanded Tyler's phone to read the messages. Tyler reluctantly handed it over, watching helplessly as Dad's expression changed from confusion to horror to rage. The payment records, coded conversations, and incriminating evidence that Tyler had been too arrogant to delete painted an undeniable picture of systematic academic fraud. Mom grabbed the phone next, scrolling through months of evidence that contradicted everything they'd believed about their golden boy. Tyler tried to explain each piece of evidence as misunderstanding or manipulation, but the sheer volume and detail made denial impossible. "Tyler," Mom whispered, her voice breaking, "please tell me this isn't real." Tyler collapsed into a kitchen chair, finally understanding that his house of cards was crumbling beyond repair. The brother who'd confidently destroyed my reputation 3 weeks ago was now faced with consequences he'd never imagined possible. "It started small," Tyler admitted quietly. "Just getting help with a few assignments when football practice and workouts didn't leave time for studying. Everyone was doing it. I never meant for it to get so complicated." Dad's face turned red with fury. "Getting help, Tyler? These are payment records for dozens of assignments. This isn't getting help. This is systematic cheating that goes back 2 years." Tyler's confession opened floodgates he couldn't close. Under pressure from evidence and parental demand, he admitted to the essay purchases, the exam answers, the fraudulent college applications, and the network of students he'd connected with assignment completion services. Each revelation hit our parents like a physical blow, destroying years of pride and investment in Tyler's achievements. But the worst revelations were yet to come. Mom found the photos of Assistant Principal Johnson and Mrs. Stevens hidden in Tyler's cloud storage. Dad discovered the recordings of their private conversations where they discussed their preference for Tyler over me. Tyler's insurance files, collected to protect himself against potential betrayal, became evidence of crimes far worse than academic fraud. "You were blackmailing school administrators?" Dad's voice was barely controlled. "You recorded private conversations with your own family?" "Tyler, what kind of person have you become?" Tyler tried one last desperate manipulation tactic, breaking down in tears and claiming he'd been corrupted by peer pressure and academic competition. He insisted he was still a good person who'd made mistakes, that his love for our family was genuine even if his methods were wrong. But Mom and Dad had finally seen too much evidence to maintain their willful blindness. The golden boy they'd protected and celebrated was revealed as a calculating criminal who'd manipulated everyone around him, including his own parents. "Where's Donald?" Mom asked suddenly, looking around as if realizing for the first time that I wasn't present for this family crisis. "He left for Westfield Academy 2 hours ago," Dad replied, checking his watch. His enrollment appointment was at 9 a.m. Tyler's head snapped up. "He's meeting with people today, isn't he? He's going to tell them everything. That's why Marcus confessed. Donald must have contacted him with some kind of proof." Mom and Dad exchanged glances as they began to understand how thoroughly they'd misjudged the situation. The son they'd punished for sabotage had been trying to protect his brother from self-destruction. The son they'd celebrated for his achievements had been systematically destroying everyone around him. Tyler's phone rang again. This time, it was Stanford University's admissions fraud department, requesting an immediate conference call to discuss irregularities in Tyler's application materials. The investigation had expanded beyond our local school district to include the universities Tyler had defrauded with fake essays and fraudulent achievements. As Tyler answered the call with trembling hands, Mom and Dad finally realized the magnitude of what they'd enabled and the injustice they'd perpetrated against their honest son. But their moment of recognition came too late. I was already 2 hours away, starting a new life at a school that would appreciate my integrity instead of punishing it. The Golden Boy's empire had finally collapsed, and the family who'd built their identity around his success was left to face the rubble of their own making. The legal consequences for Tyler began immediately and escalated beyond anything our family had imagined possible. Within 72 hours of Marcus's confession, Tyler was facing criminal charges for theft, fraud, blackmail, and operating a criminal enterprise. The district attorney's office had decided to prosecute Tyler as an adult, given the sophistication and scope of his crimes. The stolen fundraising money alone constituted felony theft, carrying potential prison time and mandatory restitution. The blackmail charges involving Assistant Principal Johnson and Mrs. Stevens elevated Tyler's crimes to a level that demanded serious legal consequences. The academic fraud network, affecting 12 families and corrupting multiple school officials, represented conspiracy and racketeering charges typically reserved for adult criminals. Stanford University not only revoked Tyler's scholarship immediately, but reported their findings to every college Tyler had applied to. The admissions fraud department's investigation revealed that Tyler's entire application was fraudulent. His essays were purchased, his extracurricular leadership roles were fabricated, and his academic achievements were artificially inflated through the corruption network he'd created. Within a week, acceptances from 6 universities were revoked as admissions officers verified Stanford's findings. Tyler's academic reputation was permanently destroyed, with his name flagged in databases that colleges use to identify application fraud. His dreams of attending an elite university evaporated completely. The legal proceedings moved quickly because Tyler's own documentation provided overwhelming evidence against him. The insurance files he'd created to protect himself became the prosecution's primary evidence. His recorded confessions, detailed payment records, and photographic evidence made defending against charges virtually impossible. Tyler's attorney advised him to accept a plea agreement, rather than risk trial conviction on more serious charges. The negotiated settlement included 18 months of community service, full restitution of stolen funds, probation supervision, and permanent notation on his criminal record. The agreement also required Tyler to cooperate fully with ongoing investigations into corruption at Riverside High School. Meanwhile, the administrative consequences at school were equally devastating. Assistant Principal Johnson was terminated and faced his own criminal charges for accepting bribes and engaging in inappropriate relationships with faculty. Mrs. Stevens resigned before formal disciplinary action and lost her teaching certification. 3 other teachers were suspended pending investigation of their roles in Tyler's corruption network. The scandal attracted significant media attention because it involved systematic corruption at one of the state's flagship high schools. Jennifer Walsh, the education reporter I'd contacted, wrote a series of investigative articles that exposed the full scope of Tyler's criminal enterprise and the administrative failures that allowed it to flourish. The community reaction was swift and brutal. Families affected by Tyler's fraud network filed civil lawsuits seeking damages for their children's compromised academic records and college application processes. The school district faced federal investigation and potential loss of funding due to the corruption scandal. Property values in our neighborhood declined as the school's reputation collapsed. Our parents faced their own consequences for enabling Tyler's behavior. Mom was forced to resign from the school board when her role in protecting Tyler became public knowledge. Dad's business suffered significantly as clients questioned his judgment and moral character. Community members who'd previously respected our family now viewed us with suspicion and disgust. The psychological impact on Tyler was profound and immediate. Stripped of his false achievements and faced with criminal consequences, Tyler experienced what psychologists called narcissistic collapse. The confident, manipulative persona he'd maintained for years crumbled completely, revealing the insecure and frightened teenager underneath. Tyler spent weeks barely leaving his room, alternating between rage at being caught and depression about his destroyed future. The brother who'd once commanded respect and admiration from everyone around him was now isolated and reviled. His former friends distanced themselves to avoid association with the scandal. College prospects disappeared. Athletic achievements were retroactively questioned. But while Tyler's world collapsed, my new life at Westfield Academy was flourishing beyond my wildest expectations. The school's technology program provided opportunities I'd never imagined possible. My teachers recognized and nurtured my abilities in ways that helped me realize my true potential. Within my first semester, I developed a groundbreaking mobile application for academic integrity monitoring that gained national attention from education technology companies. Universities that had never heard of me before began actively recruiting my application. My innovations earned recognition at state and national competitions. The contrast between Tyler's destroyed reputation and my emerging success wasn't lost on observers. Education publications wrote articles about the different paths chosen by two brothers from the same family, one who chose shortcuts and manipulation, the other who chose integrity and hard work. College admissions officers who reviewed my application were impressed not only by my technical achievements, but by the character I'd demonstrated during my family's crisis. Letters of recommendation from Westfield Academy teachers praised my resilience, integrity, and commitment to ethical behavior, despite facing significant personal challenges. Stanford University, ironically, became one of the schools most interested in my application. Admissions officers appreciated the contrast between my honest achievements and Tyler's fraudulent application. They saw my story as evidence of character traits they valued in their student body. MIT, Carnegie Mellon, and California Institute of Technology also offered full scholarships, creating a situation where universities competed for my enrollment rather than Tyler receiving special consideration. My academic reputation was built on genuine achievement rather than manipulation and fraud. The legal resolution of Tyler's case provided a sense of justice that helped our community heal. Seeing consequences imposed fairly restored faith in systems Tyler had corrupted. Students who'd been pressured into participating in his fraud network received counseling and support to rebuild their academic integrity. Most importantly, the exposure of Tyler's crimes validated everything I'd tried to tell our family about his true character. The evidence I'd compiled was instrumental in achieving justice and preventing Tyler from continuing to harm others through his criminal behavior. 18 months after Tyler's criminal conviction, our family began the slow process of rebuilding relationships and learning to function based on honesty, rather than favoritism and manipulation. The transformation wasn't easy or automatic, but it was necessary for any hope of genuine healing. Tyler's community service assignment placed him with a nonprofit organization that helped disadvantaged youth with educational support and mentoring. Ironically, working with students who struggled academically because of genuine poverty and lack of resources rather than personal choices helped Tyler develop empathy he'd never possessed before. Stripped of his false achievements and forced to perform manual labor as part of his restitution requirements, Tyler began to understand the value of honest work and genuine accomplishment. He enrolled in community college, starting over academically with courses that reflected his actual abilities rather than purchased assignments. The Tyler who emerged from this humbling process was dramatically different from the manipulative golden boy who'd nearly destroyed our family. He developed genuine remorse for his crimes and their impact on others. More importantly, he began building authentic character based on personal growth rather than external validation. Tyler's letter to me, written 15 months into his rehabilitation process, marked a significant turning point in our relationship. Unlike his previous apologies that blamed circumstances or other people, This letter took complete responsibility for his choices and their consequences, without making excuses or seeking forgiveness. Donald. His letter began, "I know I have no right to expect you to read this, much less respond to it. I spent years manipulating everyone around me, including you, and I destroyed our family through my selfishness and criminal behavior. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness, because I understand that forgiveness must be earned through changed behavior over time, not requested through words." The letter continued with detailed acknowledgement of specific harms Tyler had caused: betraying my trust when I tried to help him, manipulating our parents against me, destroying my reputation with lies, and using criminal tactics to maintain his false image. Tyler demonstrated understanding of how his actions had affected everyone around him, not just himself. Most importantly, Tyler's letter didn't ask for anything from me. Instead, it committed to specific behavioral changes and personal growth goals. He was attending therapy to address the underlying character defects that had led to his criminal choices. He was working to make genuine amends to people he'd harmed, including students he'd pressured into his fraud network. Our parents' transformation was equally profound, but more complicated because they had to confront their own role in enabling Tyler's criminal behavior. Family therapy sessions were painful and difficult as Mom and Dad faced uncomfortable truths about their parenting choices and the favoritism that had nearly destroyed their relationship with me. Mom began volunteering with educational ethics organizations, using her experience with Tyler's case to help other parents recognize warning signs of academic dishonesty and character problems. Her work helped prevent other families from experiencing similar crises. Dad made public statements acknowledging his mistakes and supporting my achievements after years of overlooking them. He attended my technology competitions and celebrated my successes with the enthusiasm he'd previously reserved only for Tyler. More importantly, he began treating me as an individual, rather than comparing me unfavorably to Tyler. The family therapy process helped all of us understand how the dysfunction had developed and what changes were necessary to build healthy relationships. Our parents learned to appreciate different types of achievement and to recognize each child's unique value. I learned to establish appropriate boundaries while remaining open to genuine reconciliation. My success at Westfield Academy continued to exceed expectations. During my senior year, the academic integrity monitoring application I'd developed was licensed by a major education technology company. The licensing agreement provided substantial financial benefits and positioned me for graduate school opportunities at top-tier universities. Stanford University offered me the same full scholarship they'd originally offered Tyler, along with guaranteed admission to their graduate computer science program. The irony wasn't lost on anyone involved. The honest brother achieved the opportunities the dishonest brother had tried to steal through fraud. But I chose MIT instead, attracted by their cybersecurity research program and the opportunity to work with professors who specialized in digital ethics and fraud prevention. My personal experience with academic fraud motivated me to focus my career on developing technologies that protected educational integrity. The startup company I launched during my freshman year at MIT gained national recognition for innovative approaches to preventing academic dishonesty. Education publications featured articles about my work, noting how my personal experience with fraud had informed my professional mission. More importantly, the success I achieved felt genuine and sustainable, because it was built on authentic abilities and ethical behavior. Unlike Tyler's fraudulent achievements that constantly required new lies to maintain, my accomplishments created a foundation for continued growth and contribution. The community that had once dismissed me as the difficult child now recognized me as a role model for integrity and perseverance. Speaking invitations from schools and youth organizations provided opportunities to share my story and encourage other young people to choose honesty, even when facing difficult circumstances. Tyler's case became a cautionary tale studied in ethics courses and featured in educational programs about academic integrity. But our family's healing process demonstrated that people could change and relationships could be rebuilt when everyone committed to honesty and personal growth. 3 years after the crisis that nearly destroyed our family, We celebrated Tyler's graduation from community college, with grades he'd earned through his own effort and dedication. The achievement was modest compared to his original Stanford scholarship, but it was real and meaningful because it represented genuine growth and character development. Our parents had learned to celebrate different types of success and to appreciate each child's unique contributions. I had learned to forgive without forgetting and to maintain relationships while protecting my own well-being. Tyler had learned that authentic achievement was more fulfilling than fraudulent success, and that character was more valuable than reputation. The life lesson that emerged from our family's crisis was profound and lasting. Integrity and patience ultimately triumph over corruption and manipulation. Sometimes the greatest victory is maintaining your character when everyone else loses theirs. Truth may be painful in the short term, but it's the only foundation for genuine relationships and sustainable success. Standing up for what's right often requires standing alone, at least initially, but choosing honesty over convenience, integrity over approval, and truth over comfort creates opportunities for authentic growth that shortcuts and manipulation can never provide. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for family members is to refuse to enable their destructive behavior, even when that refusal comes at significant personal cost. Real love requires holding people accountable for their choices rather than protecting them from consequences they need to experience. Most importantly, your worth isn't determined by other people's ability to appreciate your value. When family systems are dysfunctional, choosing your own path may be the only way to discover who you're truly capable of becoming. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where standing up for the truth put you at odds with people you loved? How do you balance loyalty to family with personal integrity when those values conflict? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's facing similar challenges. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more about overcoming family dysfunction and choosing integrity, even when it's difficult. Share this story with anyone who might benefit from knowing they're not alone in facing these kinds of challenges. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it encourages you to trust your own moral compass and choose authentic relationships over convenient lies. Remember that temporary pain from honest choices often leads to lasting peace, while comfortable lies usually create lasting pain. Choose wisely, and never apologize for having integrity.